Question towards you. I found it very interesting when you were saying with creating the new job opportunities, which I think is great and is needed. I'd like to go on the topic of the next generations. We have a massive swift, between the generations that are currently in the power positions and the ones that are coming. And I'll be very honest with you, I am one from these generations. We don't believe many things that are said because it's very often the same thing. It's said. How are you going to tackle this problem of transparency and trust that is really existing towards like all of these promises and all of these COPs and WEFs and etc. It's nice, but yeah, we don't see the results. I'm sorry. Don't want to be rude here, but yeah, I'd be interested in that.
I think that's a valid question. Before I come to you, I think the way we're looking at it as a state is how do you incentivize farmers? How do you incentivize households? So can I have a power purchase agreement with them? So whatever energy they don't use, they end up paying that. So under the Honorable Prime Minister's program, Suryaghar, which is rooftop solar for every house, that's the exact PPA, power purchase agreement we're doing with every citizen. And I think that's one of the simple mechanisms that we can create the incentive structure for greater adoption. To be fair, India has seen a rise in energy costs. And for every country to really become a developed nation, low cost of energy is going to be critical. So between solar, wind and pump storage, as of today, I don't know PSP where it will be in the next 5 years, currently is viable. So at about 4 and 5 rupees a unit in Indian rupees, it actually makes sense. So I think tying the entire incentive structure, I think is going to be very, very critical in that sense. Coming to your point, yes, I think a lot of tall promises have been made. The Honourable Minister has also made very clear in the opening remarks. But I think time has come. I mean, look at what's outside. This is probably the greenest Davos that we have seen. It doesn't feel like Davos. Last night, that's the whole discussion we were having. Things are changing. So we have to adapt to it. Otherwise, we will have tougher challenges. And if you look at natural calamities, it is going up. And insurance companies are running out of money. So we have to translate. So I think politicians are to be partially blamed for it. Not creating the vibrant ecosystem to enable it. So for me, what's exciting is mind to energy, and capturing the entire value of the ecosystem and understanding the role of human resource development, the role of real-time governance in the entire ecosystem. That, I believe, can enable India to leapfrog as a nation. Because we don't have a lot of the legacy issues that other countries have. So we never went through a personal computing phase. We just went to the smartphone phase. So I think this, even in energy, there's a potential to leapfrog. Our grids can be far more robust. And Government of India mindfully is spending substantial amount of money building the entire grid connectivity. And so I think that should solve both sides of the coin, if I may.
I just want to say that adaptation is on the agenda. And for example, one of the outcomes of also COP27 was the Loss and Damage Fund, realizing that desertification and what's happening, of course that's in sub-Saharan Africa mainly. But one important aspect is dialogue among countries and also showing success cases where adaptation was taken as a focus, and there were alternative financing tools, like what's happening in Colombia in terms of debt swap agreements, Barbados, the same. So we need to shed light in discussions on what worked, and not just what worked, how did it work? So that can also provide politicians with, in other areas, in other countries, with concrete examples that it's not just a promise, but it has happened elsewhere. What do I need to do to make sure that I can do the same and replicate and scale? So this word scaling we always hear about, is to take a successful example and see how we can. Of course, not one size fits all, but the problems are the same, and when one solution works, why not try to replicate given the initial conditions in the country? In terms of trust, I think that's well said, and it's everywhere. And I think the shocks that are facing us today are more frequent and bigger, and whether it's the fiscal space that is available for countries to be able to take action, which shock should I prioritize given the fiscal, the very tight fiscal space. So it's I mean, the credibility gap that exists can only be narrowed through better communication. And I think that's an element which there's always areas of improvement. There's no best communication. There's always scope to improve the communication. I think social media plays a very big role, and being mindful to the different generations is also important, and including them in the dialogues. I think for COP, there's also the youth dialogue at the COP level, and the different initiatives related to startups and SMEs in the climate space for adaptation. In Egypt, for instance, we have farmers today that are using solar panels instead of diesel for using the water for agriculture. That's a very important example of action for adaptation. And sometimes they're provided with loans at low cost and so forth. So it's communication is very important, shedding light on what works and being very honest on what doesn't work and what we cannot do.
Great. On that note, thank you so much. This was deeply insightful. After yesterday, I think the one thing I do take away is the commitment towards energy transition remains strong. And while there are turbulent times coming up, I'm pretty confident that we'll be okay. That being said, we'll close the session on government perspectives. And Vikas actually moved to you to have a discussion on the private sector perspective of what does energy transition.
Thank you, Ritvika. Thank you so much. You stole a bit of my thunder in terms of how I was going to introduce this, but thank you. Morning, everyone. Thank you for making it today to this session. My name is Vikas Mehta. I am the Executive Director of ZED Fund. ZED Fund is a venture and a philanthropy fund focused on renewable energy, and we're based in the Netherlands. We have with us two folks representing the renewable energy companies. The first one on further left, I have Vaishali Nigam Sinha. She's a Chief Sustainability Officer and co-founder of Renew Power, which is one of India's largest RE developers. And on my left, we have Park Arshad, who is the President and Director of Indica Renewables, a diversified renewable energy company in Indonesia. So Vaishali, if I can come to you first and straight away jump to the question, which is that we heard from Lokesh and Dr. Rania about the government perspective on what they're doing for the policy for their states and for the countries that they represent. But I just want to understand from your perspective at Renew Power that how do you see the policy environment in India, whether it's at the federal or the central level or the state level, specifically with regards to the pace and scale of RE growth?
Thanks so much, and congratulations on this event. I think it's a very well orchestrated conversation. I want to start by saying that a question was asked on, we hear a lot of these conversations at COP and Davos, but what's happening on the ground? I must say, you must come to India and see what's going on, because we've been in India I was born there, but the business started about 13, 14 years ago. I think it's been a parallel journey with India's renewable energy growth. And I think when you have a leader with a vision, and leaders, if I could say, even in the state of Andhra Pradesh, just within months of coming into power, I must congratulate the government for coming up with a robust, integrated plan for renewables, green hydrogen, which really sends a messaging. I mean, we're talking about a messaging in the United States of pulling out, but then it's 1 out of 200 countries who are still there. And so the 199 countries, if they don't follow, you need followers to have leaders, right? Mm-hmm. So let's not make leaders who must not be leaders in this climate journey. And in the first stint of President Trump, we saw that the world continued like what? And we are in a much better space. So sometimes I do feel it's important for us to step back and take stock of where we are, what we've accomplished. And in India, if I look at a decade, the renewable deployment on the ground has grown by six times. In 2014-15, we had about 13 gigawatts of assets on the ground. We have 200 gigawatts. In 2019, we were at around 50, but now we're going to do 50 gigawatts year on year. So that is the kind of progress we see. And why has that happened? That's happened, if I could come back, we have a vision, we have a commitment to the sector. We have the desire to engage with the world in a positive way. I think that by the International Solar Alliance, by the ambitious commitments at the COP, all of this is really important for us in the private sector, because when our government representatives come back, it's very easy to have a conversation on the gaps which exist for us to accelerate the pace on the ground. So I feel that I'm optimistic, I'm hopeful, and I'm positive just because of what I see happening in my own country. We have the largest grid, as you mentioned, which really is a game changer. We have SECI, which is a nodal agency, which sort of increases transparency and increases our ability to deploy in a more transparent way, to increase efficiency in the deployment, and so on and so forth. So at an institutional level, I see in India, there's a huge amount of progress and commitment which has happened. When we started Renew, the company I represent, we had knocked about 60 doors in 2011, 60 investors globally. And we had one investor who invested in our story, because people were like, oh, wind turbines, high net worth individual investment destination, what are they going to do? But now we have a business model for solar, wind, hydro, pumped hydro, and a lot of innovation around how we can leverage these individual sources of clean energy and innovate in a complex way to look at round-the-clock generation, etc., etc. So I'm not sure if this gives you a sense that at a central level there's a huge amount of commitment, and at the state level there's a huge amount of commitment by many, but not all. So the question is, how can we bring that? How can we work on that to ensure there is a central and a state level sort of alignment for us to do more, right? And as I said, the Andhra Pradesh government is doing a great job, and we look forward to working with many other states in the country. And then the alignment at the global level at these events is just